So today we have Zeca, who is right under the word activism, and he has Barbara Kopke and Moisés Patricio to the left and right. Um, and this is the final flyer, sort of, which hasn't circulated yet. And these are going to be our guests. Zeca is the third guest of our series. And let me properly introduce him.
Okay.
Zeca.
Oi.
Like next week, we are going to have Edmilson de Almeida Pereira at the same time. But today we have Zeca. Zeca Ligiéro is, among others, a writer, director, and professor. In Brazil, he is the director of the Hemispheric Institute of Performance and Politics, whose headquarters are in New York. Zeca coordinates the Afro-Amerindian Performance Studies Center, and he is the curator of Augusto Boal's archive at Unirio. There is a construction here. Zeca directed several plays in Brazil. In the US, he adapted and directed Guimarães Rosa's The Third Bank of the River and his own Elegba Crossing, A Journey. And in Colombia, Noticias de las Cosas Pasadas, based on Augusto Boal's life and plays. Zeca has books, many books published in Portuguese, Spanish, and English. Among his many publications, we have Initiation into Candomblé, Iniciación al Candomblé, Divine Inspiration from Benin to Bahia, and Carmen Miranda, Uma Performance Afro-Brasileira. In one of Zeca Ligiéro's articles, Motrizes Culturais do Ritual à Cena Contemporânea, which was assigned reading for our graduate students, Zeca quotes from the lines that explain a Mayan performance he attended in Guatemala. In my view, the lines Zeca shared with us defines his prolific work, and I quote, "The fact that we are alive, breathing the air that we breathe, that we inhabit the lands our ancestors gave us so as we can pass it on in the future to our grandchildren, it's not something we have by right, but a gift that we receive and for which we are thankful. Gratitude is a space of enjoyment, of recognition of our joy for being, for breathing, for witnessing every morning how life regenerates itself. To be thankful for a life that is cyclical, that is in continuous transformation, that has no beginning or end because it simply is. Our Mayan grandparents developed a mathematical system of great precision that analyzes and reflects this cyclical movement, which can be summarized in our concept of zero. Zero is a concept that, far from representing emptiness or nothing, contains in itself the essence of plenitude, the same word chosen by Emicida, plenitude. We represent zero as a seed, as a grain of corn, a seed that is at once the end of a plant and the beginning of another one, because the end of a cycle always represents the beginning of another. Nothing disappears or dies because everything is in constant transformation and movement. The galaxy we inhabit expands itself in a circular space and time. The DNA that forms us is an endless spiral. Everything is interwoven, nothing ends. Despite centuries of impoverishment and discrimination, we continue being the grandchildren of a millenary civilization that since its very beginning communicate to times that are still to come. In the comparativist studies of Zeca, he has been researching Afro-Amerindian performances through what he defines as cultural motrices instead of matrices. In his own words, it is through the motrizes culturais that the knowledge of our ancestors is restored in a process in which it becomes hard to divide the lines between ritual and game, where life and faith live together. And even the most incredulous spectator will feel the strength of an art that transports us to other times. E isso é o que Zeca tem feito através de quem ele é and of his work to myself and to many of us. So I give the floor to you, amigo querido. Por favor.
Okay, thank you, Isis. Thank you very much for your text. I didn't recognize, I thought that you wrote this because it's so beautiful. The way you translated becomes very interesting. Well, I prepared a lot of things, but I guess I have a dream. I like to work with dreams. You know, dreams always brings good ideas, and listening again the text that I wrote in the voice of Isis. I remember that just today I had a very interesting dream that I just tell you a part of this dream. Because I was in a classroom that I should dance, and in my biography, I never was a dancer, although I like to dance, and I have to dance, and they put the music, and I say no, I don't want this music. Stop the music, and then I have to dance, you know. And then I start to do a dance, and I was, for my surprise, I was very good, very good dancer. And I enter in a kind of a channel, you know, Afro channel, and I dance and dance and dance and dance. And finally, I start a part that was much more like a pantomime. And I remember that I'd like to study with Marcel Marceau, the pantomime that you know, those things, but I have never ever studied with him, and even I'm not a good pantomime. But I start to do a pantomime that I was taking out my my skin. And it was like, this was a pantomime, and I was taking out all my skin, like in the article that they do a ritual that they take out the skin of the warrior in Maya ritual. But my purpose was another. And then as far as I took out all my skin, I make a ball, and I start to play with the ball. And this was my dance. And, and I was talking to my friend who was a dancer, and she gave me a very nice interpretation that I'm in the new moment of my life, probably, you know, taking out my skin of professor, of you know, scholar, etc., and trying to meet myself, you know, and my essence, and for me, the fact that when I have met Afro-Brazilian culture, it was a sort of meeting, a very strong meeting. I remember another dream that I had just a moment when I was initiated into candomblé, that I was in a flying, and suddenly I found that they have dynamite, they have a bomb inside the fly, and I say, well, this fly will fall, and finally it was explosion inside the fly, but I took asa, the wind, asa, how say,
Wings.
and I start to surf, you know, I surf, but I realized that there was still a bomb in the wind where I was flying. And then I realized, well, I cannot reach the town because I will explode the town. And then I could, maneuver, I could change the way, and I finally I woke up in the hospital. I was in the hospital, and I saved my life. I saved the life of everybody. But I look at my face, I became a black guy, totally black. I changed my face, and I was happy to be black. I was very happy. And then when I left the hospital, I found my godmother, Mãe Beata de Manjá, who was as a baiana, dressed in a white with a turban, and then she was dancing like a samba baiana de Carnaval, and invited me to go to the samba, and I went to the samba, and my dream finished. And this was a meeting, very strong meeting that I had that changed my life in the 90s, beginning of 90s. And for me, it was very important to understand in deep sense what is the meeting, how to find not only the religion, but the way African people lived in Brazil, and the heritage that they left, because the heritage is still alive. And that's the research that I'm done for a long time, looking at different places where the African heritage is present. Initially, I started with Umbanda, because I have a relative who received Maria Conga da Bahia, and she invited me to go there to meet her. I was around 20 years. I said, no, I don't want this kind of macumba, this black religion is very dangerous. No, I don't want to go. But when one day I went to my sister's house, and Maria Conga was there, incorporated in my aunt, and she told me, you are escaping from me. Why? Come here. I want to talk with you. And this was very interesting because it was a relative of me that I know perfectly, and she was totally different. It was not her, it's another person. And since then, I start to very close to Maria Conga, and I'm going to show you Maria Conga here. She's here. This is Maria Conga, my friend. She helped me a lot. This is Umbanda. But after many years, Maria Conga told me one day, when I left Rio de Janeiro to work in the country, and she told me, listen, my son, one day you are going to help a lot Afro-Brazilian, as she told me, religion of Black people. And say, why? I don't know, understand. And so many years after, I realized what she was talking, because I became a priest of Candomblé, and I published a lot of books. This is some books that I published here in Brazil, and that's it. I came from the theater. I studied theater for a long time, but when I look at the first time the people dancing and receiving spirits from Candomblé, from Umbanda, and I say, wow, this is fantastic. This is another kind of theater, you know, another kind of, and the theater became, you know, so not interesting, like Afro-Brazilian religions. Well, it's different because it's not entertainment, but it's ritual, but also is entertainment. And after stays in the country for a long time, 4 or 5 years, I went to New York. I got a scholarship to study, and I went to study performance studies. And then for me, opened a new venue, a new possibilities to understand what is cultural performance. And after that, I have several researches in different places in Americas and also in Africa. And that's why that's where I'm now. I'm in pandemia, but I start to travel, but I hope to come back soon. You have several articles, and probably it would be better if I open for questions, and about the articles, I can talk more about my concepts. Because this concept was something that come to me through my work, through my practice. Not, I'm not a kind of intellectual that comes ideas and ideas and ideas. You know, it's after a lot of observation, a lot of practices, etc., and then comes one idea and another idea. The first thing that I guess is punctuated my work is a concept of Kakia Foucault about the inseparable trio, singing, dancing, and drumming. This is very important because he says it's an inseparable trio. It characterizes the African performance. And then for me, it was very important to understand this in Umbanda, in Candomblé, and lately in Tambor de Mina. That's my last research. And from this, I could understand better how the performances, African performances, stay in Brazil through the religion, because they restore their behavior. This is another concept by Richard Schechner that I use a lot. The restoration of behavior is a kind of ancestral behavior that is restored by singing, dancing, and drumming. And then I realized that the whole heritage is not something that, like in the Western model, like writing. No, it's something that's oral tradition that comes through father to son, to father to son, etc., etc., etc. And the transmission is totally different, but it's very important and very, very alive. That's more interesting. And then I, I found this word, matriz, né? Like a form or like a shape. That's
Matrix.
the, right?
Matrix.
Matrix, exactly. And then I say, well, probably the matrix is something, it's alive. It's not something that are copying from the past to the present. It's something that also is transforming. And then I try to find other, then I call it the motrizes, like a force, motrizes, like a movement. And this is another concept that I'm still working on. And yeah, probably, I don't know, if because probably it would be nice if you ask me questions and I can talk more, because it's opportunity also for you to, since the class is not so big, and I guess it would be much more interesting. The other point that I have worked, I found Robert Ferris Thompson, who is my great master, and is a reference for my work. And the idea of his research is present in my research, and then we have some clips of one of my videos about Afro-Brazilian performance that I'd like to share also with you, and you can comment a little bit. Could be, if you can, we can show first of all the film, and then we open after.
Yeah, I believe so, Zeca. As like last class, I was talking to students, and like we forget, it's like if we are going to teach a British poem, we expect that people know where Europe is, what countries form Europe, what languages are spoken, what an umbrella is, what a flute is, And when we are talking about African culture, like everything becomes very enigmatic because of our ignorances. We are very ignorant about
All
it.
right.
So I can imagine like we have like 1/4 of the audience is composed of the students, and then we have many other guests, wonderful people that I haven't seen in a while. So I think with the videos, everybody is going to have more of a sense, and it's going to become less cryptic, principalmente quando traz para os Estados Unidos.
Okay.
Jared,
maybe it's interesting to talk a little bit about the three traditions that we have in Brazil, to understand, because Africa is very general. It's important, as you know, consider the whole idea, etc. But what is interesting, because the three traditions, they have different languages, they are different ethnic groups, but they have the same kind of process of religious and festive ways. That's the singing, dancing, and drumming. You have, first of all, the Congo-Angola tradition. That's very strong, the biggest group, because they came from Africa during 4 centuries in different ways. And then the second group, we call it, in Brazil, we call it the Jeje, but is Evé Fon, from Benin, from Togo, and from other Ghana also. And this group came to Brazil in the 17th century, and they was responsible for the first candomblé house, although people discuss this, that Yoruba that came after, it was the last people who came to Brazil, and stay more in Bahia. And then you have this very strong group that became a kind of leader of the other groups, because they were the last group who arrived in Brazil and stay at the same place. And then all the traditions in Brazil are related to these three groups in different arrangements, with the native people and with the European who came also to Brazil. And my research is, in different moments, was about several traditions in Rio. I started in Rio, working with samba tradition, capoeira, etc. And then I moved my subject to Bahia when I wrote for a book, for Robert Fest Thompson book and Phyllis Galembo book called Divine Inspiration from Benin to Bahia. And then Candomblé is very beautiful, is very incredible, and you have a lot of materials. And also is the religion that the anthropologists like more, and you have a kind of Yoruba centrism among the Africanists. And the last is Tambor de Mina, that is the last also of my research in Amazon area. And this was not a dream, but I have met my godmother, Turkish princess in Amazon. Yes, that's true. I was filming, and I have met a lady who called me, come here, come here, come here, come here. And I went there, and she told, I'm your mother. And she told me everybody about my life. At that time, I was not in the Facebook. And I say, how is possible? And she told me, I say, can I write about you? I say, yes, I'm Dona Mariana. And then I say, Dona Mariana, the Princess Turkish of Amazon. And I say, oh, yes, yeah. And then she told me about my house. She told me about, problems that I have in my house. My dog, I have two dogs, and she told everybody about myself. And I recorded this. This is my video, Dona Mariana, Princess Turkish of Amazon. And then this is fantastic. This is incredible. I'm fall in love with this religion, and I want to come back there. And other day, I received a message of Dona Mariana, recorded, incorporated. She tell me that I should come back there. That's unbelievable. And well, we have these three big traditions in Brazil, but we have other traditions. And I'm very interested, not only, well, lately I start to research more about the kind of theater that is inside the religion. And then I publish, no, it's not here. No, it's, yeah, it's here. I published this book that's called The Theater of the Origins. It's not in English. Well, I hope one day Isis will translate for me. And and yeah, I guess this is the most important book, because it's a lot of research that I do for a long time, and that's it. My research is a big many different ways and different situations. And but when I was in New York taking my PhD, I have a project to work about Candomblé, I took a course with Brooks McNamara, who is a very important professor, and I wrote a paper about Carmen Miranda, and he told me, well, I want to talk with you, and say, okay. And then I went to talk with him and say, you know, I have I'm a director of the Schubert Archive. And I don't know if you know, but Schubert was the producer who brought Carmen Miranda to America. And we have a lot of material about Carmen Miranda in Schubert Archive. Oh, come here to say. So, yes, and I went, and then I changed my subject, and I wrote my thesis about Carmen Miranda, an Afro-Brazilian paradox. And okay, and then I'd like to show you the first sequence of my video that I talk a little bit about Carmen Miranda and this material, how the Africans is present in popular culture, although the white people become protagonists of this material, with this material. Can I have the first film?
Yep, of course.
There? And well, this part is not, I have Carmen Miranda material, but it's not only about her. This is me when I was old.
Awesome. And I believe that this will be in Portuguese, and we don't have English subtitles, but we can explain what he talks about once it's done.
Okay, sure.
And just let me know if the volume's okay.
Perceber em vídeos, por exemplo, da Josephine Baker, os filmes mais antigos dela, em que ela exibe uma dança monumental, uma dança incrível, que ela fragmenta o seu corpo. E isso se parece muito com o kuduro, que é a dança angolana atual. E eu comecei a comparar isso. Quando eu comecei a pesquisar as raízes afro de Carmen Miranda, todo mundo me sacaneava e falava, pô, Zeca, pelo amor de Deus, Carmen Miranda não tem nada a ver com a cultura afro. Como eu estava impregnado das tradições africanas, do Brasil, né, o candomblé e o samba, eu procurei entender como a Carmen veiculava o samba e como ela veiculava, como ela criou a sua própria baiana, que ela disse que ela criou a baiana, mas enfim, ela restaurou um comportamento de baiana dentro do imaginário dela e criou uma nova baiana, vamos dizer assim, que se tornou, na realidade, internacionalmente conhecida como a baiana. A primeira baiana em Hollywood não foi a Carmen Miranda. Um amigo meu em Nova York, que era apaixonado por Carmen Miranda, eu disse, olha, a Carmen Miranda não foi a primeira que revirou os olhinhos, isso é uma tradição afro. Ele disse assim, como assim? E aí quando eu mostrei a Etta Moulton cantando, dançando um pouco, se movimentando, vestida completamente de baiana, a bicha quase morreu, porque realmente era uma cópia dessa performance. Quer dizer, a Carmen é sensacional, eu escrevi uma tese sobre ela, adoro a Carmen, mas realmente ela não foi a criadora da baiana, nem no Brasil e nem em Hollywood, porque no Brasil, Aracy Cortes já tinha criado a baiana de uma maneira espetacular, só que ela fazia teatro de revista, né? Teatro de revista não era bem visto. Fui olhar pra você, meus olhinhos fechou. E a Carmen nasce como sendo já lançada pela RCA Victor como a grande estrela, né? Então, a gente novamente tem essa discussão do branco representando as tradições afro-brasileiras. Me interessou muito essa maneira como que as indústrias, de alguma maneira, vão também incorporando as tradições africanas.
Okay, thank you. Well, my point, my main point is how the Afro, in the case Afro-Brazilian or African, Afro-American, is first of all close to models or close to the origin in Africa, and but when comes the cultural industry, there is a kind of transformation when people take out the blackness of the performance, and other people become. And there is other sequence in the film, in that film, but I guess it's not so good. Because also it's a lot of Portuguese talking, and that's difficult for everybody. Portuguese was a code language in the Second War because nobody can talk. Anyway, I guess I can open for questions, no, and we can probably make some points much more strong.
Vou seguir com o segundo e o terceiro vídeo. O que você acha melhor, Zeca?
Eu tô temendo o tempo, né?
Não, temos tempo.
Temos tempo?
Vamos botar o segundo e terceiro que ajuda.
Tá bom, então tá. Então vamos botar o segundo.
Okay. Isis, really quick before I go to the second one, do you mind if I just give the main points that first clip mentioned in case for the people that don't speak Portuguese? Okay, so from the last clip that we saw, as Zeca was mentioning, he basically begins that clip talking about how he got pushed back to looking into the Afro roots of the image of Carmen Miranda. And then from there, he started looking more into it, and he saw that it was something that did have roots in Afro traditions and Afro-Brazilian traditions. He came to see how the image of Carmen Miranda created her own baiana to then be exported. And the baiana is sort of that image that he showed us earlier of the traditional Black woman in the white headdress and dress and whatnot. And so what he came to find, though, was that she wasn't the first baiana in Hollywood nor in Brazil. So that's where he showed the images of towards the end of the other women interpreting the baiana. And then that kind of came to the conclusion of seeing that there is a tradition of white people then representing these Afro traditions in a lot of these big industries. So now we will go to the second clip.
Thank you, Jared.
Thank you.
Of course. Sorry, let me see if I can do this. It's not letting me exit. Sorry, give me 1 second. Okay, can we see that? Awesome. And then, yeah, this is one. Cool.
No Festival de Vinité Noir, no Togo, eu encontrei 2 performances sensacionais. Vincent Erisdo e Armando Pequeno. Um brasileiro, Armando, e o Vincent é de Benin. E eles criaram uma performance chamada Dambala Edo, que é o nome de um vodum, que no Brasil recebeu o nome, esse vodum também foi assimilado na tradição iorubá, virou xumaré. Então no Brasil a gente conhece como xumaré, que é a serpente, né? O arco-íris e a serpente, enfim. Mas eles fazem uma performance que trabalha com o universo místico do candomblé e do vodum, mas ao mesmo tempo eles trabalham com uma dança contemporânea e que assimila uma série de gestos, uma série de conotações, o que torna o trabalho muito interessante exatamente essa forma lúdica e essa forma, vamos dizer, de alguma maneira eles são agressivos, eles chegam em alguns momentos são cômicos. Isso me pareceu extremamente rico e fascinante, porque normalmente a pessoa, o afrodescendente que vai trabalhar com as tradições, ele é muito fiel e muito devoto, ou então ele procura sempre se esmerar, vamos dizer, no estilo da dança, no virtuosismo da dança. E também eles trabalhavam com uma orquestra de atabaques e de outros instrumentos, que novamente elencando essa ideia do cantar, dançar, batucar.
Jared, could you do the translation? That was great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. So he was talking in that clip about some of the performances that they see in Togo, which is a country in Africa. And so he was talking about how the performances that you got to see, while they do have a lot of like kind of traditional or historical linkages to those older traditions of like Vodun or Candomblé, they also have like contemporary touches to them. And he became really interested in them because you can see that they have like a playful nature to them, but they also can get aggressive at times. And at the same time, you see the orchestra playing in the background of the atabakis, which are like the drummers. And you start to see that trio that he mentioned at the beginning of the dancing, the drumming, and what was the third one? I forget. Dancing, drumming, and singing, or
playing.
Awesome. Oh, and playing. Okay, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great. Yes, I guess for people who don't know Candomblé and don't know Vodun is something very strange, but we have to think about a kind of other cosmovision, distant from the Christianism, Judaism, or Muslim, because they believe in the God who wrote and through the human the law, and then the most important is the Bible, is the Torah, is the Al-Quran, and for Candomblé people, Vodun people, the most important is the nature. The nature is the source of divine. Every energy comes from the sea, from the sun, from the rain, etc., etc. And then the symbolism is different, and everything is different. But particularly, what caught my attention in this performance is that they are very respectful through Vodun and through Candomblé, but at the same time, they are free to play. Like in my dream, they are not representing the superficial, but they can play with everything, you know. And this is very interesting because, you know, I remember I was a Catholic when I was a child, and in the church you cannot talk, you cannot even no, because you know it's something very for me. I don't know, probably now it's more free, but anyway. And on the other hand, in the Candomblé, people are more free to play. When if a children is playing during the ritual, no problem at all. And then that's what I thought was interesting, because they're playing like a children, and they have this kind of freedom to incorporate and to play and to create the thing. And that's what I loved this performance, and I wrote as because they're working what I call the forças motrizes, né? I don't know how to translate forças motrizes. How
like the motive forces.
Motive forces. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let's go to the last film, please.
One sec.
Is all the following sequence?
Mm-hmm.
A música tem muita importância para a chamada dos orixás, para a pessoa se levar naquele toque dos atabaques, naquela batida dos atabaques, a pessoa é levada para o plano superior para receber a possessão do seu orixá. Porque no momento em que está tocando os atabaques e você está dançando ali para o orixá, está cantando, você está sendo levada, você está como uma noiva que está indo na beleza do encontro do noivo ao altar. É assim que nós nos sentimos. Nós, quando nós estamos dançando, estamos naqueles cânticos, nós estamos sentindo que estamos sendo possuídas, estamos sendo levadas para os braços dos nossos noivos ou das nossas noivas.
Embora largamente empregada por religiosos, a conceituação matriz africana tem sido incorporada por estudiosos de campo sem grandes questionamentos. Entretanto, a definição de matriz cultural, válida para muitas áreas e contextos, tem se mostrado insuficiente para conceituar a complexidade dos processos interétnicos e transitórios verificados nas práticas performativas ou nas performances culturais. Aqui, em vez de matriz, Zeca Ligiéro propõe uma definição, um conceito, e também utilizado no plural, motrizes, para conceituar a complexidade das dinâmicas das performances culturais afro-brasileiras.
Nesse vídeo, nós abordamos principalmente as performances culturais.
Okay. Translation, please.
Yeah, so in that clip, they began talking about the orishas, which are like the divine figures within a lot of Afro-Brazilian religions. And they talk a lot about how important dance and performance and playing instruments is for connection with orishas. So the woman was kind of describing how when they go through this process of dancing, of playing the atubakis and whatnot, it's almost as if the orishas come down and possess them, or they kind of like embody the orisha, and that's how they feel a connection with the sacred. Then they showed some images comparing how similar a lot of those performances are between the African continent in Togo, for instance, and then going to Benin in Brazil. And then finally, the woman starts to explain how they started with this idea of matrix, and kind of how Zeca explained earlier, as well as Isis. It started to get incorporated into a lot of different fields, but then specifically in cultural studies and intercultural studies and kind of like performance studies, it didn't really hold up very well because it was kind of more inflexible and it did refer to just like a specific structure, excuse me. And so that's when Zeca came in and proposed the idea of the motriz, the like kind of forces and dynamic forces to be able to account for the changes and kind of fusions of these different performances and cultures.
Okay, thank you. This lady who was describing the process of getting trance, she's comparing the trances with a wedding, like you're going to meet your partner, and then it's a moment, a very strong moment, and then you're feeling that you're going, and then it's Catarina Dunham dancing in a espécie entering in trance, also in the theater. And it's very, for me, when I have seen for the first time Catarina Dunham, I became very impressive, and she's incredible. She was incredible, and And the lady who was talking about the trances was Mãe Beata de Iemanjá, who was my godmother. And I interviewed her. I was just starting doing a research. It was in the 90s, in the 1990. And I have no idea that what's going on. I know this was, and this was a film in VHS. People don't know anymore about this. You know, this is like cassette, tape cassette. You know, it's a museum. But anyway, I recuperate this material, and yeah. Well, this is an idea of my research, and probably we can open a little bit. And also, it was interesting the way that was in slow motion, the dance, but it gives a sense of how it seems that they're copying the movement, you know, but they don't know each other. One is Vodun and another is Orisha. One is Evé Fon tradition and another is Yoruba tradition. But they're, you know, you can see the symphonies and very close. Yes, well, this is a little bit a little show of my work and my worries, and probably we can talk a little bit more according to your.
There are already some questions here that we can use, Zeca. The lady that you saw, Mãe Beata de Iemanjá, for my students, I mentioned her last class. The lady that I told you that walked with me in the Botanic Garden in New York and explained to me, okay, you do not have this herb over here, but you can use this one to replace it. That is Mãe Beata de Iemanjá. So many moons ago, Zeca created this non-for-profit organization called Alafia. And he put me, I don't know, as treasurer, as like he gave me some position there, no? At one point, Mãe Beata came to New York, no? And she presented at the Caribbean Cultural Center. And at the end, Zeca and I took Mãe Beata and John Mason to have coffee. Somewhere in the Harlem, we sat to have coffee. Now, Mãe Beata didn't speak English. Mason does not speak Portuguese, no? So in principle, they couldn't communicate. Remember that, Zeca?
Yes, I remember.
At one point, Mãe Beata de Iemanjá starts singing. And then John Mason is singing with her. And this goes on and on. So at times they were singing the same things. At times one was adding a part of the song that the other didn't have. It was one of the most magical moments of my trajectory. You know? E tem algumas perguntas aqui, por exemplo, like Leila raised her hand. Let's see, kinetic forces. Arthur Hughes mentioned kinesis is a very important concept, but it doesn't translate into motrices. No, it's kinesis is connected, but Zeca Douglas asked, do you think the drums playing on Umbanda and Candomblé is linked to transe movements? Then Arthur says that he's glad that you mentioned capoeira, that he was going to ask what connections he sees with African dancing and rituals. And there was another that came in, it was a comment here. Let's see, Jonathan. In a previous class I had with Isis, we discussed how it was similar to Elvis in popularizing art with black roots using a white face. Actually, you have other examples in this this video, no, of U.S. how in the US, some of the Black forms were popularized by white icons, no? And all these videos are, Zeca has a YouTube channel with a gazillion followers. I just recently discovered that. And these videos are there. So you can see many more comparisons with US national expressions, cultural expressions, and their Black roots. Mas tem a Leila, there is Leila and Lisa with, okay, thank you, Jared. He just shared the channel. Leila, would you like to make a question?
Leila, where is Leila?
Tá aí, ela apareceu agora.
Desculpa, demorei para desmudar. Tudo bom? So, thank you for your presentation. I really enjoyed watching the videos because to have a better idea, especially of Dambala Widow, because we read about it, but like seeing the bodies moving really makes a difference. And I have two questions actually. The first, if you could talk a little bit more about how you changed the inseparable trio of singing and dancing and drumming into the quarteto inseparável.
Yes, okay.
The narration aspect to it. And also in one of the articles that we read when you're talking about Dambala Widow, you talk about contact improvisation. And I thought that was a very interesting concept, especially because I know nothing about performance. And then I'm thinking, how do you rehearse contact improvisation to then perform it multiple times? So I don't know if you have any insights on that. If you could share that, that would be great.
Okay. Well, the first question, it happens that when you have a performance with the trio singing, the dancing and drumming, sometimes the story, they're telling a story, but the story is not more clear. It's not clear. The story is more subjective, and I noticed that in the performance, sometimes they start to add a little verses or little small sentence, and they say, well, there is something different that's happening here, because and also when I found the griot in French is a very strong tradition, African tradition, that the griot is more storytelling, and then he uses music and dance and sometimes drumming, but the main point is storytelling. And then I say, well, then if you have a quartet, it will be complete, because you can understand better what's going on. You know, sometimes it's just two, or predominant is 2 or 3, or sometimes 4. And your last question, I'm sorry, I forgot.
It was about contact improvisation.
Contact improvisation. Well, this was, I noticed that they are working not, because what happened is they are not, they're dancers. They're dancers, like they know contemporary dancers. And then that's, I noticed that they're not using only the traditional dance style from candomblé and dance style from, and especially because they have a kind of game, touching game, body touching game. They say, well, there is some points of contact improvisation. And I asked a friend who is a dancer, and she told me, well, probably they know about contact improvisation, and they incorporate it. And that's what I guess is much more interesting, because there is not a folk performance. It's not, you know, they're not only doing imitation of what's, there is a mimesis. It's not a mimesis of a tradition. No, they are working the tradition in a very free way, very contemporary way of, and then became a contemporary dance. That's I like that. Not something that's inside the square. No, you know, it's. So I like the art that's not, that you cannot control, and that's the idea. Thanks for the question.
Oh, thank you very much.
And I guess Leila was pointing at rehearsing. So rehearsing will send us back to statico, no? It has to rely on improvisation. Like, I'm sure it's going to be different each time, no? Lisa also has her hand up.
Hi, I'm Izis's colleague here in the Department of Spanish and Portuguese, and I focus on colonial Latin America, and I've worked a bit on festivals in this period. So I have lots of research related questions I could ask, but I actually want to ask a question framed more. I invited my students here today in a course that's called Travel and Exploration, a general education course about early European accounts of travel to different parts of the world, incorporating African and indigenous perspectives when we can, but of course we have far fewer accounts from that perspective. And this question is kind of inspired by your book, which I'm very curious about, that you shared about studies of Afro-Amerindian performance, because of the commonality of the function of drumming and ritual performance related to drumming in both indigenous American and African cultures. Thinking of what Isis spoke about, that experience of being able to communicate across linguistic barriers through song that you experienced is so powerful. When we study these first encounters when they couldn't communicate, I'm sometimes struck by the role that music, dancing, or drumming can play. And we just read Columbus's first letter this week, but actually it's in the third letter where there's a very interesting moment where Columbus is approaching a canoe of indigenous Americans across off the coast of Venezuela. And Columbus orders one of his men to start drumming, thinking that, and as he says in the letter, that this they will interpret this as friendly, and that they will approach to see the fiesta, you know, that they will come to see the party by drumming. But it doesn't elicit that response. In fact, they start shooting arrows at Columbus and his ship, and they have to flee. So that drumming does not allow that cross-cultural connection that it might have, because, but you can also understand, I mean, Columbus should have known drumming is often used in an aggressive military context to make a threatening sound for the enemy. So, but my question is, if your book addresses, or in your research you address that confluence and happening around drumming between indigenous American and African cultures.
Well, in this book here, I have some articles that I work with Native Americans. I mean, I work more with Mayan and the Mexica also. Oh. But now when I was talking, I remember we have a very strong analysis of how the process of colonization started in Brazil, and from this point we have a dramaturgist who was a priest, a Jesuit priest, who wrote several plays José de Anchieta. He was a Spanish guy, but who was living in Portugal. And then every book about theater, you say, Brazilian theater start with José de Anchieta. It is a kind of medieval mysteries. No? But we have the first letter, that the discovered letter wrote by Pero Vaz de Caminha, and nobody notes that Pero Vaz de Caminha named a guy who was go first, and he was doing a dance with a flute, and they interrupted indigenous ritual. They interrupt the ritual, but the indigenous was so astonished, so surprised with this, that they start to laugh and follow the two guys dancing and do a kind of acrobacy. And this guy was a comedy, was a guy who works as a comedian, but he has a job in the caravel, in the boat, and there is a lot of other comments condemning this kind of liberty inside the boat because it is not Christian. And that's a very interesting point, because we have very little documents about these meetings, about, this is like an ancient tradition of a joker, medieval joker, minstrel, that came to Brazil and is still strong in Brazil. But just what interests people is literature, what's writing. And that's the big problem. And I'm glad that you mentioned, because I have to write about, I don't know, 30 years. And now I'm reading more like all the literature that they have now about colonialism, and say, well, I'm doing this for not with the people, I mean the authors, because I came from other field, but I'm very comfortable analyzing now with all decolonized literature, because it is helpful. But in fact, there is very little people that create this link between Afro and Amerindian. I understood when I started this 20 years ago, because it was a moment for African people say, no, our identity is African, and indigenous people say, no, our identity is native and not African, not native. Right now, they are more, changing, and then we have more literature about, and more people talking about, because I believe that's, I'm applying the same idea of Foucault, singing, drumming, but I'm not using drumming because it's use the maraca is not the
percussion, maybe.
Percussion, yes, yes, percussion, but there is another name that's more beautiful than percussion. Chacoalhar. In Portuguese, it's chacoalhar. I don't know in English how.
I think it's just shaking.
Shaking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Not as specific, no.
Thank
This
you.
is fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm ordering your book.
Yeah, no, Zeca is available on Amazon. And I have someone very dear to me, lost in Phoenix, now in England, who emerged here, Chris.
He says, hello.
Hello.
It's so good to see you. Hi, Zeca. It's so great to see you, or great to meet you for the first time. I'm a fan from Facebook too. So I have a question for you. Like, so you mentioned something that's a connection that's really exciting to me. So I don't know if you, Elegua is back there and Oya is over there. So I'm initiated in Lukumi. But before my initiation, I lived in Chiapas for a while. My ex-wife was studying Mayan theater, like in 1996 up until like 2002. And so I thought some interesting connections between Yoruba worlds and Mayan worlds. And then like a few years later, I don't know if you know Dennis Tedlock. The Tedlocks were visiting us, the anthropologists, and I was in the backyard. I was digging up a bottle of chamba for my Palo altars, and he came out in the backyard and like interrupted me because he wanted to read a poem that he'd written when he visited Ile Ife and saw connections between the Mayan deities that he was very familiar with and what he was seeing there. So I'm just interested in that I hadn't thought about it in a while, that Yoruba Maya connection, and where I could start looking, or maybe I need to learn Portuguese and read your books probably, but.
Well, I'd say that's not a connection in the sense of it's more a symbolic connection, I mean. And what I have observed is that the cosmologies involves not only nature, but also the human archetypes, no? And in that sense, we have the mythologies that somehow captures the soul and captures the deeper part of the culture, and that's one point. And the other point is that they are culture that's embodied culture. Is not only intellectual culture, is culture that comes through the trance, through the body. And I guess this is not only Yoruba, I'd say the Congo culture, the Ewe culture, they're connected to indigenous culture. There is some difference because African cultures were developing in a kind of almost a state cultures and a more metropolitan culture. And in the other is a jungle culture. That's a different way. You have in the mythologies of African sort of palace intrigues, or palace. You have the king that love the other princess, etc., like you have in the Greek. This you have in Shango marriage Oya, but he likes Oshun, and Oshun likes Ogun, etc., etc. The kind of love story that's more close to a town, a metropolis life. And then you have the other culture that's more close to the jungle, to the nature, and then you have more anthropo figures, like, for example, in Vodou, you have still a very close connection to the animals, the force of the animals, like you have in the forest. The animals are very strong, but in Yoruba culture, the animals are not so strong because you have a more metropolitan culture, more city life, and then you have still the nature, but more symbolism of the nature than the nature itself. I don't know if I answer your question. This is a very, very, very attractive subject, but it's very difficult to link. But what in my article, what I would like to talk is just this: how is possible to think about the contemporary performance of a group of theater in Maya culture and a group of theater or dance in Yoruba and Ewe Fon culture. Because sometimes people ask me if I talk only about the past. I say, no, I'm talking about things that are happening now. Although I like the past also, but is something, because we are very in the big cities and also in living in internet all the time, and you forgot the nature, forgot the cultural performance that are alive, is still alive, although we are not going there because we're in a pandemic. But 1 year ago, they are very alive. That's and my point is why the artists don't visit the cultural performances, not as folk, not to copy them, but to understand the symbology, to understand how deep it is, né? And like in my dream of my beginning, why we have always stay with the same skin, with the same dress, with the same persona. Why? If you give up our persona, our mask, we can find other culture inside ourselves, because we are several. We are not. I'm not schizophrenic, but you understood, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
I think this is a lovely way to close this talk, Zeca. That we are not one, we are many. Like, I decided to wear this dress today for your performance. It's a gift from a friend that went to Ghana. And there is a scroll here, and it's from the fallen tree. And it says, one tree alone cannot stand the wind.
Yeah.
Then it can. So when all this essences that we see in Oya's tale as well, when she dresses the buffalo skin, when they come together, these essences, what can happen, and it's powerful stuff. And we got to our time. There are some questions here that I'm going to pass them on to you later on, Zeca.
Okay.
E eu te agradeço muito. Acho que foi muito bonita a palestra, a apresentação.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I hope to see all of you next year.
Next year.
I'm planning, I'm applying for a visiting professor in a university close to you. I don't know, I cannot tell the name, but if Shango and Oya and Eshu give me this, and Maria Conga is here, and I bring her also to my visit, okay? And
Já querem.
Nice to meet you and see you again, I hope. And if you want to come here, visit our school, if you need the invitation, I can do it, okay? Just tell me, tell Isis, and you have my address, and I'll do a letter for you, okay?
Many obrigadas coming in the chat to you, Zeca.
Ok, então tá. Um abraço. Tudo de bom para vocês.
Abraço.